Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment in our Golf Blitz Tips and Tricks series. Today, we will be making our way back through the list of available tours, and we're basically caught up at this point, barring that there aren't any new tracks that are added within the next little bit. But that brings us to another one of the Tours 10, and specifically we will be having a closer look at the Mystic Mines Tour, which is a little bit tricky in terms of how it is laid out, how it behaves, but that's what we're here to do. We're here to take a little bit of a closer look at it and give you some pointers on how you can perform better on this tour. So if you enjoyed today's video, make sure that you leave a like on it, and don't forget to subscribe for that daily variety content. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the Mystic Mines Tour. So starting off, we have a hole that's interesting, to say the least. Now, there's one of a couple of different ways that you can go about this one, and the quote-unquote riskier of the two is trying to go for that narrower path that's right there. But if you do find yourself a little bit too far back, or aren't able to make that on your initial shot, you are going to want to opt for this back portion because it allows you to get a lot closer to the actual green instead of having to deal with this snaking back and forth. If you can make your way into that right off the bat, it's obviously better because it gets you closer to the green, but if not, you do want to opt for that back portion, as well as watch out for sabotages from your opponents on that particular hole. The next one is interesting as well for different reasons, and you can really go either way here at the start. I think that it's negligible as to which way you do end up going, but if you end up taking this right-hand path, you can get a better, more favorable bounce onto, or you may be able to get a favorable bounce off of this onto the rotating platform that has the goo on it in order to there get a slower follow-up. And then that diagonal ramp that you saw on the right-hand side of the course, if you make your way onto that as opposed to on the green, you should roll down onto the green and be in a pretty favorable spot. Now, this one is fairly straightforward in terms of how it's meant to be played, where you just kind of snake your way back and forth down this course. There's a couple of narrow passageways, particularly right here, that you need to be sensitive to. But what you can do if you have access to the gooey ball is you can make your way over to this wall and then get a nice little follow-up right down onto the green. Now, unless you have a lot of power stat built up, you're probably not going to be able to make the shot from spawn over to that right-hand wall, but it is definitely an option of something that you can do. So kind of like I was saying before, if you don't have access to the gooey ball, then you're going to want to progress down this tour as you would normally. And it's really kind of particular about how a lot of these shots work. And sometimes if you get a favorable bounce there, you can make your way through that bottleneck instead of making a tertiary shot up there. But really, it's just a matter of snaking your way back and forth down the course. These little risers on the extended putting green can be a little bit tricky to get around, but if you pop into a sample tour, you can get enough experience with them to the point where you are a lot more comfortable and can sink those putts a lot more efficiently. Here's another hole that can be a decent amount of fun. Now, if you have something like the Powerball, or the Super Ball, I guess you should say, then you may be able to take a shot over the top. I kind of messed that up, but I'll try to demo that with my alt account here, as you'll see me fly over the overhead, and that gets me down to, or gets the alt down here to a point where the follow-up is a lot more direct. From here, you can do something very similar and use that Super Ball to get your way down here. This platform does not rotate constantly though, so you've got to be sensitive to that and kind of time your shots accordingly based off when it rotates. because you will either get stuck on the goo that's there, or you're going to end up rolling off of the edge and ending up over here on that right-hand side. But all things considered, not terrible. You've just got to be aware of how that platform is rotating and how you can correct over to the other portion of the course if you don't end up on the gooey bits of that rotating platform. And then we have this hole, which this one can be really quite tricky for a couple of different reasons. But ideally, if you can get to the point where you stick on this little platform here, it is possible with a more accurate shot to make your way down through this little opening, but you're honestly going to be better off if you plan on correcting that shot from a lower portion of that platform as well. So biggest thing to be aware of is whether or not you can make that initial shot past the spinning crescent there. So this hole is another one that has a lot of going back and forth. And so basically you're just going to want to make your way across the top. There's not a whole lot of tricks to this until you're at the very, very high levels of play, when you have access to, I believe it's the burrow ball, which allows you to bypass some of the natural hazards of the courses by burrowing through them. So not really a whole lot that you can do until you reach that point, at which point you can basically bypass the entirety of this course. So you're just going to want to make some wise decisions with the shots that you are taking to get around here. And then if you want to kind of curb the best chance of getting your way into the hole down at the bottom, if you bank off of that diagonal portion in the ceiling in that last little shot, then you should end up fairly close to or rolling into that hole down towards the end. So this course is another one that's kind of fun, and by that I mean that it's can be terrifying, because there's a very precise shot that you can get that can get you around that little water hazard. I didn't end up pulling it off there, which is fine, because it's honestly a lot easier to do if you're from more direct trajectory. But basically you just make your way down yet again and loop your way around the course. Now if you do have access to the gooey ball, then you can stick over here on this side, which allows you to circumvent a lot of this circle tracking that happens with this course. But if not, there's not a whole lot of really great options for allowing you to do that. So I guess the spider ball, again at higher levels of play, could really help at getting around that curve and closer towards the actual green. Here's another one that can be kind of fun. Now, if you have access to higher accuracy or the sniper ball or something that you're confident you can make this shot on, then you can really get down further along that course than a lot of your opponents can. If not, the intended method is for you to take the shot down onto this lower resting platform. So just kind of be aware with what your resources are and whether or not you're able to pull something else like that off. But other than that, it's a fairly straightforward hole once you get down through that bottleneck there at the start. So here's another really fun one that is more of an uphill battle than some of the other ones that we have seen. And it requires a lot more precise aim on some of these holes or some of these shots, because there's a lot of water hazards that are scattered throughout. But if you make your way over towards the back end here as quickly as you can, if you have the super ball, that'll really help with expediting that process. You can make your way down decently fast, and then you're going to want to try to bank off of that wall like so, because if you hit this little triangle, you're going to be sent down into this secondary area for an additional follow-up shot, which isn't the end of the world, but if you can avoid it, it's 1 point in your favor against your opponents. Okay, well, I have played through this course a couple of times just to make sure that we have covered absolutely everything, and I do believe that that is the case. But do you feel like there's something that I missed or a particular trick on a hole on this tour that I overlooked? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below, and if you do have those types of corrections, I will address that in a future video. But for now, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and be sure to check out the playlist that has all of them if you have missed any previous iterations. Thanks again for your time, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.